So, what would be your best tip if someone's been drinking a little bit or a lot, and they're in the process of being pulled over? What should they do? What shouldn't they do?
Well, that's an interesting question. What I always tell individuals who have perhaps consumed some type of drug is that it's critical that they at least have one beer. And the reason that it's critical that they have one beer is because when they take that breath test, if it shows up that there's no alcohol and you have consumed some drugs, they are going to take a blood test from you, which will then show the presence of drugs. However, if you have taken some alcohol, you will get a very low reading, and therefore the suspicion of drugs in your system will be greatly reduced.
Huh.
If you've taken, and that, I know it's a little bizarre, but if you've taken alcohol in California, the severity of not taking a chemical test is extremely significant. If you refuse to take a chemical test in California on your first offense, you could potentially lose your license for 1 year. So I advise my clients, because of that option, that they should take a chemical test. However, they should never take any other test. The officer will offer you field sobriety tests, will ask you questions, and again, you want to be polite, but you don't want to provide any additional evidence for the police officer. If he says he'd like you to take a walk the line test, you want to be polite to the officer and explain that you really appreciate his asking you to do that, but you have a bad back and you are afraid of hurting your back and you'd prefer not to. So you really don't want to take any test or answer any other questions, but obviously you want to be polite and tactical about it.
Okay. Hmm. So, what kinds of help have you been able to provide to your clients? For instance, have you been able to reduce jail time or ignition interlock requirements, things like that?
Well, I think certainly all of those things are able to be reduced and eradicated and often eliminated. But I think probably the most beneficial thing is being able to assist those individuals who perhaps do have some problem with drugs or alcohol, and this perhaps is a wake-up call, being able to assist those clients in getting perhaps the assistance they need with those issues.
Okay. And, this may be hard to say, but, what level of success have you had in mitigating some of the problems or all the problems people come to you with when they're, arrested for DUI?
Well, I think that it's safe to say that by all means, certainly the majority of cases, we've been able to accomplish some better result for the client had they been represented by themselves or had tried to do it by themselves, whether that be in terms of assisting with a program, with the ramifications on their license regarding court appearances and inconvenience from work. To that extent, we're certainly able to help most individuals.
Okay. And is there a particular story that you hear from a lot of the people that come in? Like, I only had 2 drinks, or
It's
I
two
don't know,
beers. It's two
2 beers.
beers.
Okay.
Yeah. Proverbial 2 beers. You never want to tell the police officer that you had 2 beers. From wherever it started, from the beginning of driving under the influence to today's time, the joke is that the individual only had 2 beers. So I would say that's probably the most common situation.
Okay. All right, this is probably related to the story you hear, the 2 beer story. But what have you learned in general about people's behavior, their reaction to being arrested for DUI? What human insights have you gained to the whole process?
Probably the biggest insight is the fact that for some reason people think they can talk themselves out of it. They think that if they explain enough, say the right things, act in a certain way, that they will not end up getting arrested. The reality is that almost all of the time, if in fact you've been drinking and you have alcohol on your breath, you're going to be arrested. So that attempt to try to talk your way out of it, that attempt to try to explain it, is really only going to provide more additional evidence for the prosecutor. So really what the best advice is to be polite, but say as little as possible.
Do you think that over time being a police officer, do you think they get very good at being able to tell if someone's intoxicated, or do you think they don't really have any special ability?
Oh, I think, the reality is yes, they have special ability, but when it boils down to it, depending upon the level, they really don't have much better ability than you or I. I mean, the reality is the first step is still the odor of alcohol. If a police officer smells that odor, you're going to end up being arrested.
Okay. And do you feel the current DUI laws and punishments are too harsh? Are they too lax, and why?
You know, I think that they are too harsh to the extent that they affect an individual's ability to really provide for his family. Even in a first DUI situation, uh, an individual is looking at losing their license for 30 days. That is a significant period of time for an individual who's trying to get to work, trying to support his family, trying to do what he needs to do. That 30 days, I think, is not required. That individual certainly gets the message by the fines that are being imposed, the often 6-month to 9-month alcohol program that they have to participate in, the restriction on their license. Those are all messages enough. And I don't think the additional message of having to lose your job and unfortunately not provide for your family is necessary.
Okay. And I guess the doomsday question is, what do you see as the future of DUI laws? They're going to get worse, and
I can tell you they're never going to get any better. Unlike the situation, perhaps with other types of crimes, the penalties for drunk driving are not going to be reduced. Over the last 35 years, they've only been increased. The alcohol levels started 35 years ago at a 0.15. It then went down to a 0.10, and now it's at a 0.08. There's certainly discussion about even lowering that to a 0.05. So I don't think there's any likelihood whatsoever that that they're going to get any more lenient.
so what would you say makes you and your firm unique in providing DUI defense, and what statement do you want to make to potential clients that are watching this video?
Really, the most important word is just don't drink and drive. That $25, that $50, that $75 that it's going to cost you for that taxi cab ride is minuscule compared to the thousands and thousands of dollars that you're going to unfortunately have to face if you are arrested and charged with a driving under the influence. The reason I think we're able to help is not only the 35 years of experience that we've had in this area, but also our ability to relate to people on a one-to-one basis and be able to know what they're going through and be able to help them in that situation.